We begin my top 36 remaining running back rankings. Remember that players who played on Thursday night or if they're on bye are not included in these rankings. So if you see somebody missing that fits under that criteria, that's why. We have running backs that I think are probably mid to low end RB3s. We have Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, Zach Charbonnet, Austin Eckler, and Jaleel McLaughlin. Ray Davis is playing Miami. I don't think he gets a ton of volume, but I do think he scores, and so I think he's a decent flex shot. Then we have Tyler Algier. He's gotten a substantial amount of work considering he's the RB2 behind Bijan. I think that in an easy matchup, he also gets a rushing touchdown. So I think just like with Ray Davis, he's a solid bet to get a touchdown in this game. Then we have Zach Charbonnet against the Rams. I think he sees a good bit of pass game usage in this one in what should be a pretty high scoring game. Then we have Austin Eckler against the Giants. I think he gets a couple grabs in this one and has an efficient day overall. Then we have Jaleel McLaughlin against Baltimore. I don't think he's going to be that efficient on the ground, but I do think he gets a couple grabs, and I do have him scoring a touchdown this week. Now we have running backs that I think are probably mid to high end RB3s. We have Raheem Mostert, Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, and Alexander Madison. Raheem Mostert, I think, is going to be quite efficient on the ground. I don't have him scoring a touchdown, but I think in what should be an advantageous matchup for them in terms of their yards per carry averages, really for all of the Miami running backs, I think he's a high upside play, and if he does happen to score a touchdown, I think he finishes with a substantial amount of points this week. Then we have Nick Chubb against the Chargers. I think he's going to see increased involvement in terms of his total volume, although they do have Jerome Ford coming back, so I don't think he's going to see a ton of receiving volume in this one, but I do think he gets a couple of grabs. Then we have Javonte Williams against Baltimore. It's a really tough matchup. I think he's going to get a bunch of usage in the passing game, just like with Jaleel McLaughlin, and so I do think that gives him a solid floor. I just don't see him being hyper efficient this week on the ground. Then we have Alexander Madison against Cincy. I don't think he's going to be incredibly efficient either. I just think he's going to see a ton of volume, which makes him a pretty safe floor guy because of it. I just don't think he has a ceiling week, and I don't think he scores this week either. Now we have running backs that I think are probably high end RB3s to low end RB2s. We have Travis Etienne, Rico Dowdle, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, and J.K. Dobbins. Travis Etienne is playing Philly. It's a really tough matchup. I don't think he's going to be very efficient, but I do think the Jaguars are going to be losing this game, and so I think he sees a good amount of passing game involvement. I think that with him playing, it really makes Tank Bigsby unstartable in my opinion because I don't think the game script is going to be in their favor, and then I think he's going to split carries with Bigsby. And so I think Etienne is the preferred play in this one. I just don't think he has a massive day. Then we have Rico Dowdle against the Falcons. I don't have him scoring a touchdown, but if he does, I think he's going to have a much better day. I think he's going to see a solid amount of passing game involvement. I just don't think he's going to have a crazy day in terms of his efficiency on the ground. Then we have Bucky Irving against the Chiefs. It is a really tough matchup. I do think, though, that he toughs it out and plays. He did not practice, and so he's listed as questionable. I do think he toughs it out, though. They said that it's an injury. His toe is an injury that's just going to last for the rest of the year, really, but he's been playing through it. He's looked really good, so imagine if he didn't have that injury. And so, yeah, I think he sees a ton of passing game involvement, just like Rachaad White. And so I think that he's a pretty high floor play. I just don't think he's a ceiling play in this one. Then we have Chase Brown against the Vegas Raiders. I think that he's going to be pretty efficient. I don't have him scoring a touchdown, but I think he's going to be pretty good with his touches. Then we have Ramondre Stevenson against Tennessee. I think with Drake May probably not playing in this one, that really just inhibits his upside. I think that causes him to be a lot less efficient in this game, although I do think he sees a decent amount of involvement. Tony Pollard did not practice. He's listed as a game time decision against New England. I do think he plays. I do think, though, that he's going to probably not see a full workload, and I think Chestnut is going to see some work that would normally be his. And so for that reason, I don't have him scoring a ton of points because, once again, I think he's going to see somewhat limited touches compared to what he would normally see, but I do think he's involved in the passing game and is a decent floor option in this one. Then we have J.K. Dobbins against the Browns. He's been really inefficient recently. He's been helped out by touchdowns and pure volume. And what's a tough matchup against Cleveland, I think he sees a good amount of volume again. I just don't think he has one of those ceiling days because it is a really tough matchup for him. If you like what you're hearing and seeing so far, feel free to like and subscribe. Make sure you check out my other rankings videos in terms of quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends as well. And remember that Thursday night players and people on bye are not included in these rankings. Thanks. Now we have running backs that I think are probably mid RB2s to potentially high end RB2s. We have James Conner, Brian Robinson, David Montgomery, Chuba Hubbard, Rashad White, Josh Jacobs, Kareem Hunt, and Aaron Jones. James Conner is facing the Bears this week. It's a really tough matchup. I think he sees passing game involvement and a good amount of volume overall. I just don't think he's going to be very efficient, and I don't have him scoring a touchdown. Then we have Brian Robinson against the Giants. I do think that he scores a touchdown in this one. I think that he and Austin Eckler split touches, and I think Jaden Daniels does steal a rushing touchdown on the ground. David Montgomery is facing the Green Bay Packers this week. It's a pretty good matchup for him. I think he is able to exploit it in terms of having very good efficiency this week, and I do think he scores a touchdown. I just think with him splitting touches with Gibbs, that it just inhibits his upside. Then we have Chuba Hubbard against the Saints. I think that Jonathan Brooks misses this game, leading him to having one more outing as the pure, unquestioned lead back. And so I think he's pretty efficient. I don't have him scoring a touchdown. I don't think the offense overall is going to be that great with Bryce Young starting, but I still think that he's going to have a pretty good day considering. Then we have Rashad White against the Chiefs. It is a tough matchup. I don't think he's going to be very efficient on the ground at all, but I do think he sees a good amount of passing game involvement, and so I do think that he's an upside play. Then we have Josh Jacobs. He got into limited practice. He is questionable. It's also a tough matchup against Detroit. And so for that reason, I don't think he's going to be hyper efficient, but I do think that he scores a touchdown and sees a decent amount of volume overall. Kareem Hunt is playing against Tampa Bay this week. He's been really inefficient with his touches, but I think due to massive volume and him scoring a touchdown in this one, that is a pretty decent play as an RB2. I just don't think he has a 20 plus point game or anything. Aaron Jones plays against Indianapolis this week. I think he's going to be pretty efficient. I do have him scoring a touchdown, and I think he's a very high upside play against the Colts this week. Now we have running backs that I think are low end RB1s this week. We have Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker III, Tyrone Tracy, and James Cook. Jonathan Taylor is playing against the Vikings. It is a tough matchup. I think, though, with Joe Flacco at the helm, that really improves the offensive efficiency. I do think he scores a touchdown, and I think he's going to be quite efficient on the ground despite it being a tough matchup. Then we have Kenneth Walker III against the Rams. I think he scores a touchdown, that he's involved in the passing game. I don't think he's hyper efficient on the ground in this one, but I think he has a pretty good game nonetheless. Then we have Tyrone Tracy against Washington. He's been a revelation so far. He appears to have completely phased out Devin Singletary, despite Singletary playing almost 40% of the snaps. For instance, Singletary only had 2 carries last week. Tracy passed the concussion protocol. I think he's going to be efficient. I think he scores a touchdown, and I think he has an incredibly high amount of upside. Then we have James Cook against Miami. I think he's going to be incredibly efficient. I think he's heavily involved in the passing game, and I do think he scores a touchdown. Now we have running backs that I think are mid to high end RB1s with a very realistic shot at being the RB1 overall. We have Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, DeAndre Swift, Devon Achane, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, Alvin Kamara, and Bijan Robinson. Derrick Henry is coming off the worst game he's had in a while. He still had over 70 yards and a rushing touchdown, so if that tells you anything about his performance this year. I do think it's a tough matchup against Denver, but I think he does score a touchdown, is pretty involved, and I think he sees a lot more usage. I don't think the Ravens are going to be trailing in this game. Then we have Jahmyr Gibbs playing against Green Bay. 2 weeks ago, he had a 40-yard rushing touchdown. This past week, he had a 70-yard rushing touchdown. I don't think he has a 70-yard rushing touchdown again, but I think he's going to be very efficient. I think he's going to be involved in the passing game, and I do think he scores. I think he and Monty are both fantastic options this week. Then we have DeAndre Swift playing against Arizona. After a very slow start to the year, he's definitely picked it up. I think he's going to be a weekly top 10 option for us. He's a great fit for the offense, and he sees a decent amount of passing game utilization as well as most of the rushing attempts, including goal line work. And so for that reason, I think he's a pretty strong play. Then we have Devon Achane playing against Buffalo. Their run defense is one of the worst in the NFL. I think he's going to be very efficient with his touches. I think he does score a touchdown, and I think he sees heavy passing game utilization in this one. Then we have Saquon Barkley against Jacksonville. I think he's going to be efficient with his touches, receive pass game utilization, score a touchdown, and is one of the better starts this week. Then we have Kyron Williams playing against Seattle. He has scored a touchdown in every single game so far this year. I think that continues. Seattle's run defense is pretty suspect, and so I think he's going to have a very strong outing, and I think he scores a touchdown again. Then we have Kamara against Carolina. I think that he gets Derek Carr back. I think that improves the efficiency. The matchup against Carolina is very good for him too, and so I think he smashes this week and returns to being an elite RB1. And finally, we have Bijan against Dallas. He had a slow start to the year, including last year, but he's picked it up recently. I think he sees a good amount of utilization in this game, including in the passing game. I think he scores a touchdown, and it is my projected RB1 overall this week. And so to conclude, running backs that I think are probably low end RB3s, we have Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, Zach Charbonnet, Austin Eckler, and Jaleel McLaughlin. Running backs that I think are probably mid RB3s, Raheem Mostert, Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, and Alexander Madison. Running backs that I think are probably high-end RB3s to low-end RB2s, we have Travis Etienne, Rico Dowdle, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Orlando Stevenson, Tony Pollard, and J.K. Dobbins. Running backs that I think are probably mid RB2s to high-end RB2s, we have James Conner, Brian Robinson, David Montgomery, Chuba Hubbard, Rashad White, Josh Jacobs, Kareem Hunt, and Aaron Jones. Running backs that I think are probably low-end RB1s this week, we have Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker, Tyrone Tracy, and James Cook. And finally, running backs that I think are probably mid to high-end RB1s, we have Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, DeAndre Swift, Devon Achane, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, Alvin Kamara, and Bijan Robinson. Alright, so you know the drill. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Is there somebody that I don't have projected for enough points and that's why they're not in these rankings? If so, let me know below in the comment section. Remember that players who played on Thursday night or people who were on bye are not going to be included in these rankings. So if you see somebody missing and they fit under that criteria, that's why. With that being said, make sure you check out my quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end rankings as well. And if you like what you've seen and heard, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks.